This episode is brought to you by the travel agency. Now boarding, taking off by flower, edible, or pre-roll. The travel agency. A cannabis store.
Through hallways and alleys, dark days I carry, sharp pains and bellies. All days be heavy when you're programmed to survive. Legendary ciphers get the MCs in the jobs. The city never sleeps, slept from 1 to 5. When COVID hit the block and we had to stay inside. Tough love is all I know, so be gentle with my soul. Learn to navigate winters with no coat. If you never been cold, you never been broke. Hustle 24/7 just to stay afloat. So New York, like dollar pizza in that cold world shit. That real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit. That real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit. That real...
Welcome back. We are halfway through our first season. We are super excited here on this. What they do that?
Clock it.
I'm not doing that. Yo.
I'm doing it.
We first want to thank Marijuana Dispensary for having us last month. You have truly this has been a truly great learning lesson, and if anything else, and today will be no different, right?
No different. Before we actually jump in,
yes.
Happy 420 post.
Oh, that's right. Post,
you know what I'm saying? Post. Come on.
Yo, I completely forgot that.
Did you celebrate?
No. Yes, I did. I just don't want to say I did on TV. I just don't want to say I did. Absolutely, I recognize.
Drop.
420. Puff, drop. I was dropped.
You were dropped. Okay, all right.
So today will be no different.
No different.
We have an amazing guest here who has been not only a dear friend, but a leader in our community.
Absolutely.
On the behalf of equity through not only here in New York City, but throughout the state. Matt Wilson.
Yes, indeed.
So this is Let's Talk Cannabis, and I'm going to pass it to you. You let the audience know. I know you're here. We're here. What are we doing?
We're going to take a quick little moment and flip the script.
Flip the script.
Yeah. Flip the script. Peace and blessings, mi gente y familia. Welcome back to Let's Talk Cannabis. I'm your host, Jamil Myrie. Over the past few episodes, we talked about jobs, licenses, getting into the cannabis industry, and much more. But today, we're talking about something different, something not enough people even know about. We're talking about our communities and the money they're supposed to have access to. See, legalization wasn't just about opening dispensaries. It was supposed to repair some of the devastating harm on Black and brown communities, which for decades were over-policed, over-criminalized, and locked out of opportunity. So when New York legalized cannabis, there was a promise, codified in law, that a portion of that tax revenue would go right back into those same communities. And that's what the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund is supposed to do. Questions? Is the first round of grants actually working? Do local community organizations even know about this fund? And is the impact visible to the community at large? I got thoughts. Today, we're going straight to the source with our very, very special guest. But before we do, let me bring in my co-host, my brother, Professor Coffee.
Yo, I really appreciate you, Mill, and I want to take this opportunity. I think it's important that we frame this conversation in a broader context. Reinvestment wasn't simply about policy. I think it was more of a mechanism to repair, but specifically historically, we've seen that well-intentioned policies can fall short in their execution. So today, it's really about alignment between policy and practice and the actual impact, I like to say that's on the ground.
Exactly. All right, so let's get into it, right? Today, we are honored to have with us in the building Mr. Matthew Wilson, the Director of Community Grants Reinvestment Fund. He's here, he's here, he's here. Matt, welcome to the show. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Can I say woo woo?
Yeah, you can say woo woo.
Jamil, Professor Coffee, it is a pleasure to be here with both of you guys. I have followed your work, and it's a real honor to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor to have you here with us, Matt. And that's Jamil. We've been super excited about this conversation. We've done some stuff in the past. We've seen your work and your commitment to our communities, and we know how important this is to you to ensure that what's happening not only here in New York City but also in the state aligns with the values and missions that we have collectively. Matt,
let's get right to the foundation because we got a lot of things I'd love to cover. All right, so for our audience, let's frame it. What problem was the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund created to solve? Because I know there are a lot of people, they hear reinvestment but don't really understand what that means in practice.
Sure. I think the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund was designed to create some measure of justice for the communities that were most harmed in the drug war. If we look at just cannabis arrests from 1980 to 2021, we see that 1.3 million New Yorkers were arrested, 57% of them Black, 25% of them Hispanic. So when we think about our past drug laws, and we're not even touching Rockefeller-era drug laws, the disparities between crack cocaine and powder cocaine, but when we look at the enforcement of prior drug laws, these laws were not enforced equally across the state. They were enforced disproportionately on Black, brown, and poor communities. And when we moved to legalize cannabis, the thought was, shouldn't some of this money go back to the communities that were most harmed in that drug war so that they can at least benefit and that there can be some measure of restitution as we realize our prior policy was wrong? How can we start to make it right? And I think that's at core what this program is about.
And just to expand on that, from a policy standpoint, when we think about this fund, what are some of the ideals? What are some of the focuses that you believe are intentional in this work as this is being set forth?
Yeah. So in the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act, it sets aside 40% of the cannabis tax revenue to come into the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund. And then the law lists a broad range of services and support that the fund can contribute to. And broadly, I would put them into three buckets. There are services and systems level reform that are meant to help communities regain their stability after coming out of carceral settings, after decades of economic deprivation. So what are some of the core things that communities need to find stability? Next, I would put it in the bucket of opportunity. Workforce development, job placement, economic opportunity. So a lot of the things that we can support are there around opportunity. And then third, well-being, right? There's quite a bit in the law around supporting mental health, public health, maternal and children's well-being. So really, I think the fund can kind of be thought about as stability, opportunity, and well-being for communities most harmed in the drug war.
Wow.
So this isn't about building cannabis businesses, right? It's about reparative justice and repairing these most harmed communities.
That's right.
Right. Let's jump over to probably break this down a bit, just in terms of just the fund itself, in real terms. So in 2024, New York did over $870 million in cannabis sales, and collected over $195 million, right, in taxes. And according to the law, 40% of those taxes collected are to go into the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund. So that's just about roughly $78 million. But for the 2024-2025 round, the fund only had $5 million to distribute, right, to grants as far as the nonprofit organizations are concerned across the state. Kind of, I guess, help us with the math on this, because I'm wondering, 78 million, 5 million, what happened to 73 million? Where did that go? I thought we were supposed to be able to access that, right? So if you could, please.
Sure. So it took New York several years to get the market up and running, right? We legalized in 2021, 2022, the first dispensary is open. Throughout 2023, we see cannabis dispensaries starting to come online. In those first few years, there really wasn't a lot of revenue for the market. And we are funded by the tax revenue itself. And in fact, the first $5 million that the fund had actually originated from the medical market, because I think the Cannabis Advisory Board and leadership at OCM at that time felt like, all right, look, we got to get this program going. Then the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act required that OCM pay back any money that we have borrowed in order to establish the office and establish the market, right? When you legalize cannabis, it's not really politically popular to say, oh, the state is going to pay for this policy transformation from its general revenue. We tend to pay for it from the future revenue of the cannabis market. Right. So we actually had, in those early years, had to pay back some of the funding. We are just now getting to a real inflection point where we have paid back what was borrowed, and as new revenue starts to come in, the appropriation that the fund should receive will be significantly more. So, for example, in this fiscal year, the appropriation for the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund is $25 million. Now, that is still less than what the fund has overall accumulated, and there is a gap between what is sitting in the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund account and what is actually getting appropriated to the program. And it is that gap that we seek to close in the coming years, partly by building the capacity to make sure that we can give the money back effectively and efficiently.
Thank you for that, and just really clarifying. I think one leading or sort of tag-on question is, like, who actually determines and sort of the decision maker, committee, group, what have you, as far as just like how much money, how it gets, allocated for each particular. Well, not that part, but we can get to that part too. I guess that's the part two of the question. But who determines? What body determines how much money is out there for being distributed for grants in that particular fiscal year?
Yep, our appropriation is set by the Department of Budget.
The Department of Budget. Okay. All right.
So when we're talking about, I think part of this is when we talk about that funding towards youth programs, workforce programs, et cetera, that's kind of committed to ensuring that that funding goes to support those communities and organizations and economic developments in communities most harmed. And I think the other part that what I was mentioning, but I think we talked a bit earlier, is can you help our audience, because a lot of people have heard this, but it's kind of like, okay, we know there's a board, there's some kind of board, the Cannabis Advisory Board. Can you help us understand, help our audience understand who is the Cannabis Advisory Board? What is their role and how does that impact the communities and the organizations that receive funding through that mechanism?
Sure, thank you for that question. So the law establishes the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund, and then it establishes a governing body over that fund. That body is called the Cannabis Advisory Board. And the Cannabis Advisory Board, by statute, really has two responsibilities. One, they advise the Cannabis Control Board and the Office of Cannabis Management on the cannabis market, regulations, hemp, the medical market. So they have an advisory function over the cannabis market and our policies. Second, they have a governance role over the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund, and that's enumerated in the law. So when it comes to, say, the priorities of a particular request for application, right now, for example, we have an open procurement, an open opportunity for people to apply. And the parameters are you need to be serving youth, defined as individuals 0 to 24, in 5 programmatic areas: mental health, workforce development, housing, substance use disorder services, and harm reduction. Those programmatic decisions are determined by the Cannabis Advisory Board. So in a way, as the director of the program, I get my marching orders from the Cannabis Advisory Board, and then it's my job to go implement that program to the best of our ability and within the compliance and requirements of state finance law and the Office of the State Comptroller.
So does the buck stop at the Cannabis Advisory Board? Is that where the buck stops as far as decisions and determinations as far as the monies that get allocated from the tax revenue collected and how it reaches to the community?
Yeah. So yes, at the end of the day, the final decisions over where the money goes does rest with the Cannabis Advisory Board. Okay. However, we have to follow a very intricate and complicated procurement process. So honestly, there's not really any one individual or exactly one body that determines who does and doesn't receive an award. Okay. So all the applications come in. We have to first check to make sure that they are eligible, they meet the minimum eligibility requirements, and then each application is reviewed and scored independently by 3 individuals. Okay. Those scores are then averaged together to create a ranking list. And then we actually have a sort of complicated process between priority counties and Empire State Development regions, where what we want to do is make sure that awards are going to the counties where the vast majority of drug war harm was inflicted.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And so we're going to run to a break and come right back. But one last time, once again, this has absolutely nothing to do with supporting cannabis businesses. This is about the community business organizations doing the work locally on the ground, correct?
That's right.
All right, cool. We're going to come right back.
Life's daily battles are not meant to be fought alone.
We're not powerless, so long as we don't lose sight of what's important.
Don't be afraid to seize that moment to talk to your friends.
Cloud, you okay?
Because checking in on a friend can create a safe space.
The first step on our new journey. You coming?
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Seize the awkward. It's totally worth it.
Welcome back. So let's jump into some other talk. Let's also talk about what actually happened in the first round, not just what was intended. In that first round of funding, a lot of organizations applied, especially those deeply rooted in communities most harmed by prohibition. So, Matt, I want to ask you this directly. When you look at that first round of grantees, I'm not trying to get you in trouble in it like that, who received funding, would you say that those grantees were truly representative of the community-based organizations and communities most harmed by anti-cannabis?
Yeah, thank you for that question. First, I am incredibly proud of every single organization that we have the opportunity to support, and I'm incredibly proud of my colleagues at the Office of Cannabis Management who reviewed over 340 applications to ultimately get to the 50 that received the awards. And for anyone who wants to know who got that first round of awards, on OCM's website, cannabis.newyork.gov, you can go see our award book. We have put out a book that catalogs every single award to all 50 of the awardees. At the same time, I certainly recognize that the results from that first round, we need to learn and improve on them. We need to make sure that every time the results get closer and closer and more impactful to community. Yeah. And there are a lot of challenges there. I don't want to leave anyone with a sense that it is simple to get to those results. First, organizations have to navigate a very complicated state process to apply for funding. That right there disadvantages many small organizations.
The SFS?
SFS
yeah,
pre-qualification.
So
that's
SFS,
right.
yes.
In order to apply to us, you have to be pre-qualified in the Statewide Financial System at the date and time the application is due. That's one process you have to navigate. The request for application itself, it also has a number of required forms and answers, and then you have to submit the application and OCME grants. Look, all of these things are both required from the side of administering a program, but do create challenges and barriers for a more easy access that we would like to get to. So we are learning. I am not satisfied at all that we have gotten to the results that I think we need to get to for this program to have the impact that it's intended. But again, proud of the work we've done, proud of many of the organizations. Look, of those 50, 80% of them are servicing zip codes that have CDIs within them. 41 out of the 50 are serving CDI communities. So while I think the organizations themselves, we need to do better to get to Black-led, Brown-led, grassroots, nascent organizations, I think the projects that we are supporting, on the whole, are aligned to the purpose of the fund.
Yeah, because I mean, we talk, I'm candid, right? A lot of organizations, I think, including ours, really walked away feeling stunned, sort of shocked a bit, and feeling like there was a disconnect. And in my temperature taking out in the field, out amongst the community, the local CBO community, folks felt like there was a real disingenuous sort of residue that was sort of left in those folks' mouths, as a result of everything. But the results showed something entirely different. And I appreciate you sharing and just being vulnerable to just the process and the results. And this is not a calling out of any sort, but more just like here's what the streets are saying, right? And how do we, in essence, now reconcile the gap between what was promised and what communities actually experience? And I think you touched on that.
Yeah, you really just touched on that, and I think that in previous conversations you mentioned that not in a way it's just it's a way when we talk about some of the things when we talk about implementation of different programmings, et cetera, et cetera. But I do know that you really hinted on hey, we're going to continue to work to get closer and closer to that marker. And one thing I've acknowledged, I think, in the circles when Jamil and I spoke, also understanding that in this first, this is that first round, and now it's like the training wheels. We got to get these wheels, and now we're trying to ensure we meet all the markers, but we know we're not going to meet all the markers, but our intentionality is still committed to meeting those markers. And as this continues, this industry continues to grow and this work continues to grow, I guess there is that hope, and from with your leadership and the work that's taking place, that we'll continue to get closer and closer to those areas of that marker in which we've been discussing. Because I think even with social equity, intent, and barriers, some barriers, administrative capacity, grant writing, institutional assets can, kind of unintentionally, I think, skew the outcomes. So I think that in a lot of the work, again, when we talk about capacity, evaluation criteria, I think there's just a much more larger structural thing that you're committed to, that you've acknowledged here. And we have to acknowledge to the community that has say, hey, we want to, and again, I got to say, thank you, because Jamil, you leaned right into some of those concerns. So those who have reached out to us, who have been speaking with us, we can say, hey, Matt is committed to this work. You didn't shy away from it. You said, hey, we understand we didn't get the mark, but we'll continue to work towards it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have said this before publicly, and I will say it again now. I don't think there's any amount of money that can ever truly repair the harms inflicted on communities over 100 years of the drug war. And then the law does limit us. We are able to fund community-based organizations and governmental entities. While I think those are important mechanisms to bring some level of repair back to community, those mechanisms themselves are limited in what they can and can't do. Admittedly, when I came in, I inherited a request for application that was already written and a process that is very developed with the state. I am looking in the years ahead to really restructure not only how the fund is focused, but how the fund operates to move money back to community. I think we need to use some different levers to make sure money reaches community in more local and proximate ways. And I think as we're building our capacity going forward, that's what I'll be looking to do.
So, thank you. You know, let's sort of let's switch it up a bit now. I want to bring the audience into the show and bring them in now on this. And so, if I'm running a CBO, a community-based organization, right now, today, and I'm tuning in to Cannabis in the City.
Cannabis in the City.
Right now, today.
Here we are. Here we are.
And now I know that there's this funding that exists. What should I do or be doing, need to be doing today to position my organization for a chance at a grant?
And you told me you were going to break the fourth wall to let them know what they need to do.
Yes.
Go, man.
Yes. Here we go. Number one, you need to get moving fast. The application deadline is May 13th at 5 p.m. So everything I'm about to tell you, you need to get done by May 13th at 5 p.m. Number one, you have to be pre-qualified in the statewide financial system at the date and time the application is due. If you are not pre-qualified in the statewide financial system at this time, you need to get working on that right away. You can Google that. You can go to OCM's website. We have lots of links to it in our request for application and on our website, but you need to get started on the SFS pre-qualification process right away. In parallel to that, you should go to cannabis.ny.gov and navigate to the request for application. Right now, it is at the very top of our website. Go to the request for applications and read that document very closely, because inside that document, it will tell you everything you need to know about applying. So one, you have to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. You don't have to have anything to do with cannabis. You need to be working with youth. Youth are defined as individuals from 0 to 24. And you need to be providing services in one of 5 programmatic areas: mental health, workforce development, housing, substance use disorder services, and harm reduction. You'll find all the questions that you have to answer, all the required documentation that you need in the RFA. Take a look at that, do your best to understand it. We have lots of guidance documents on the website that you can link to, so if you need tutorials, additional explanation, there's lots of help there. Then final thing I will say is you actually submit your application in OCM eGrants. This is a different system from the SFS pre-qualification system. So that's one. You then need to submit your application by May 13th at 5 p.m. in OCM eGrants.
Now,
That was a word. All right. Nothing said that, right? That was a word. No, there is no money. It's free to apply, right?
Free to apply.
Free to apply. But it was a word, and I would have to say this because you said a couple things. SFS, State Financial System, right? That's one place you have to get pre-qualified, which is one entirely different platform. And then you actually apply on eGrants. 2 separate different, and so folks think they've done what they need to do on pre-qualified, and they haven't actually, wait, and they're finding this out literally at 11 o'clock at night on the 13th.
Yeah,
right?
Start right away.
Okay.
Start right away. And yes, so it is a requirement of New York State, of the Office of the State Comptroller, that anyone who applies for funding for a grant with New York State has to be pre-qualified in the statewide financial system. That is not an OCM requirement. That is a New York State requirement. Yeah, we as an agency, we're a new agency. We're not actually in the SFS system, so that's why we have eGrants as the platform to submit your application. In the years ahead, again, we're looking to try to streamline that, but this is what we've got to work with at the moment.
Now I got to say something. One of the things, we got those cats like, all right, now, man, now, who got it and why they got it and who got it? What differentiated, and only if you can say this, because I know that you're in a balancing act where you're trying to make
We
sure
have an open procurement, so I have to be careful what I say.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's what we're very clear on. What do you think when you think about some of the organizations that were awarded last year, which I have to say, sorry, we were part of the press release. It was an amazing opportunity to see that work in action. So I have to say that. But what would you say differentiated some of those who were awarded the grant to those that weren't, that may give our viewers some insight? Because I want to say to you, they have their papers and pencils out like, Matt said, FSS, then do this, then do that.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that in your opinion, only if you can say, that made some of those grants that you received stronger than others, that other individuals who may be filing, submitting, made a little bit more stronger? How was that?
Yeah, it's focus on purpose, right? The purpose of the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund, as stated in the law, is to reinvest in communities disproportionately affected by prior federal and state drug policies, period. If you are working with that community and you are focused on that community, we want to hear about your work and what you're doing. Next is the RFA itself focuses on youth in these 5 programmatic areas. So just be very clear with us what it is you want to do, how you plan to do it. Those are the things that really help an application stand out. They're clear on the purpose and they align with what the RFA is asking for.
All right, so last question, before we dovetail into some reflections. If legalization promised to repair harm, what does success actually look like, in your view, for the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund?
Yeah, thank you. Success for me is that we are creating a diversified way for these funds to reach community, that the way these funds reach community are actually responsive to what community wants and needs, and that we have built-in mechanisms where we are hearing from community and we are learning. Just like today, I appreciate your questions. It's not the first time I've been asked about the results and how are we getting better. Those dialogues are exactly what help us to improve. And so success for me is hearing that, trying to structure a program that at least meets some of those expectations. Right. I'll be real, it's hard to meet all the expectations, and there will always be a difference in opinion about whether or not our results fully align. But what I can tell you is that we are working every day to get as close as possible, and we really do want these funds to get back to communities in ways meaningful to them.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. You got any reflections?
Yeah, and so that's going to be, and again, I know that there's this ongoing commitment as the industry continues to grow, that there will be a more deeper investment from your office, from the governor's office, as well as the Community Advisory Board, to really begin to spend more and more on that work. So I think we want to say we are just super excited, and I think that, I know that I could say one last thing, but I do want to say, Matt, if you could let our audience know what's the deadline, when does this need to be in, how soon does this need to be in for them?
The deadline for the open application process is May 13th at 5 p.m. No exceptions. You have to be pre-qualified and submit a complete application by May 13th at 5 p.m.
Matt Wilson, Director of the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund, I really, truly want to thank you. It was truly our humble honor and privilege and pleasure to have you in the studio today, to really sit down and have this real important conversation about this grant.
I appreciate both of you guys so much. I appreciate the work of CJEI, and it's my honor to be here.
It's an honor to have you. Take us out.
Mi gente. So here's what we know. The money exists. The structure exists. The intent on paper is there. But execution is everything. Because if the communities that were most harmed don't even know about these resources, then we got a whole lot more work to do. And this ain't about calling anyone out. It's about making sure the system works for the people it was designed to serve by law. So if you're a community organization, 501c3, with your 501c3 paperwork, if you're doing the work on the ground in these streets, don't sit back and wait. Act now. The time is now. The application window is open until May 13th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time sharp. When it's 5:01, you done. Because this is your moment too. This is not about supporting cannabis businesses. This is a broader mandate. This is Let's Talk Cannabis. Let's spark the conversation. We'll be right back.
What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to Justice and Cannabis, where we break down what's growing, what's glowing, and what's going wrong in New York's legal green rush. I'm your host, Sean Farrell from CJAI's Justice Lab. Jeff has the night off tonight, so I enlisted my law partner in all things cannabis related, David Hourlick. David, welcome to the show, brother.
Appreciate the invite, Sean. Glad to be here.
Man, you picked a good night to be here. Last month we were talking about courts fighting, regulators resigning, and somehow how a measured tape almost took down 150 dispensaries. You know, usual chaos. But tonight we're doing something a little different. We're letting the numbers talk. See, the Cannabis Control Board just dropped their April meeting data, their March meeting data, sales figures, profitability rates, equity stats, and David, some of it's growing, some of it's glowing, and honestly, some of it's straight up going wrong.
Sounds like a typical Wednesday, New York City cannabis, huh?
Show you right. Let's just get into it. All right, first up, what's growing? And I mean growing. So check this out. According to OCM's official data, New York's legal cannabis market just hit $404 million in sales for the first 3 months of this year. March alone, $145 million.
So to put that in perspective, that's more than all of 2023 combined.
Exactly.
There's money out there.
The program to date total is now over $3.1 billion. That's not nothing. That's real money flowing through legal channels, being taxed and in theory being reinvested into the communities that got hit the hardest during Prohibition.
And the stores are actually performing. The average dispensary is doing $4 million a year.
Ooh, that's not bad.
It's a good start for the largest market in the world.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. So it's real. And every month it's getting bigger. So that's what's growing. No spin, just facts. Oh, and one more thing real quick. Medicare just started covering doctor-recommended CBD products up to $500 a year. The FDA says they won't block it.
Yeah, but here's the catch. The new federal hemp ban kicks in November, and that can make these products illegal again. There's a 7-month window, but who knows what the future is going to unfold.
So I guess that means, bottom line, CBD is finally getting some federal love. That's what's growing. How long it lasts, you don't say. All right, now let's talk about what's glowing. And this one actually has me feeling some type of way in the chest.
All those dabs from this weekend?
That was a good time. We'll definitely get to that. Now let's talk about this. And the one that's actually got me feeling some way was the promise of the MARTA equity, right?
Yeah.
And the numbers show progress. 56% of all adult use licenses in New York are owned by social and economic equity applicants. That's a majority. That's not a talking point. That's real.
But here's where it gets interesting. Look at the retail dispensaries. Specifically, 75% are SEE owned, social and economic equity. 3 out of every 4 weed stores in New York State are owned by people the law was designated to help. That's actually remarkable. Name another industry where 3/4 of the retail outlets are owned by people and communities from disproportionately impacted by prohibition, over-policing, and all the bad stuff that has happened for years until this was fixed.
That's a great point, and I don't think we can, right? Because it doesn't exist. That's what's glowing. The equity framework is working on paper. On paper, the licenses are in the right hand.
Yeah, but here's where we have to be honest. Ownership and on the paper doesn't always mean success, right? Patience.
Yeah, and that's where the glow starts to fade a little bit, which brings us into the third segment here. What's going wrong? And what's going wrong might involve a little bit of the gray market. Look, I'm not trying to be negative, right? You know me, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Because if we don't name the problem, we certainly can't fix it.
Yeah, so let's start with the headlines from OCM. The survey, less than half of operational licensed dispensaries are profitable. Less than half. Less than half of the licenses which are owned by those affected by the war on drugs, over policing and prohibition, aren't making money.
Yeah, repeat that again. If you own a legal business in Canada, in New York right now, you have less than a 50% chance of being profitable. That's not really a sustainable industry.
Yeah, the illicit market, the traditional market, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it traditional market, legacy market.
Yeah.
These are the people that have traditionally been impacted most by the drug laws and have been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I get why we have the gray market, right? We have, or the traditional market, as you like to call it. I get it. The state took forever to open up the legal market, and people wanted cannabis, and entrepreneurs saw an opportunity.
There's also the barriers of entry into legal cannabis.
Say more.
I think the biggest one is money.
Yeah.
Right? How much money it would take to run a dispensary versus a micro business versus a grow operation or processing operation, and that's a hard feat to cap.
And so let's stay there for a moment. What kind of money are we talking about?
It depends. Millions of dollars is what we're talking about.
Yeah. And so most of our folks are priced out of that. So that's not competition. That's the state competing with itself then.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem. That needs to be fixed.
So here's my question. How do we get the traditional market into the legal market? How do we turn those legal operators instead of shutting them down?
Sean, that's the right question, right?
Yeah.
Because when we talk about justice, when we talk about the people that were impacted, we have to understand that people didn't start smoking cannabis in 2021 in New York State when it was legalized, right? There is a long tradition of people that have, for lack of blood, sweat, and tears into this plant, to this culture, into this industry,
yeah.
and making sure that they have access to the legal market and pay the taxes, just like somebody who has access to millions of dollars at hand or knows how to talk to the right people that can connect them with that. That's the big picture of social equity here.
Okay. So what's the alternative? Few things.
So we can create a formal pathway from the traditional market to the legal market, right? Not amnesty, but like progress, an actual way for these businesses to transition, or these entrepreneurs. For a lot of these people who are just entrepreneurs. They don't have land, they don't have a retail location, but to get these people on a pathway where they can actually get into the legal market.
So we're talking about reduced fees, expedited review for their applications, and maybe lower taxes, right? How about banking access? Would that help?
That's critical. We're talking. I mean, the biggest barrier is money here, right? And being able to not only store your money,
Yeah.
but have access to a bank that's willing to work with you is important, right? And the reality is, until federal legalization kicks in, it's going to be up to these small banks and credit unions that are willing to take on this business, and they're taking on risk.
Yeah. And so one of the things I think the state could do, or at least push for, is to have more of these small banks available for people who are trying to break into the industry, and support not only those folks trying to break in, but support those banks as well.
I think it's a multifaceted way, right?
Talk to me.
There's that. There's social equity that funds that need to be created by the state through the taxation plan, as was spoken about earlier. I mean, it is the more not everybody's problem is the same.
Right.
But so the more pathways we have to money, the more pathways we have to legalization. Look, the better the legal market is going to be, because the reality is the traditional market is the tip of the spear of culture, of innovation, of everything, and their input into the legal market will not only make New York State the largest market in the world, which it already is, but the place to come for cannabis. And that's what all of us should want, is New York to be, looked at as, what California is. Yeah, which it should rightfully be.
And that dovetails into what what we talked about at the beginning of this, where we were at this past weekend, right? We got to see, behind the scenes of the possibility of New York's green market. I mean, talk about that for a second.
Yeah, we had the privilege of attending Masters of Rosin, the Billy Awards this past weekend, and the life, it really is not only the level of quality and stuff like that, but it is the epicenter of the cannabis culture, right? And that's a beautiful thing to be a part of, and for it to be actually happening here in New York for 420 and not in Barcelona or not in LA or San Francisco says a lot to what's actually happening here in the New York space, both the legal and the traditional markets.
I like that, right? We're not talking about hanging out with criminals, which is what used to come to mind when we talked about cannabis.
I don't even know what that is.
We're talking about entrepreneurs who got tired of waiting, right? They want to be legal. They just don't need a path that's going to bankrupt them.
They want to pay taxes. They want to do the things the right way. But you have to understand, they've been doing things without the right way being even available. Now that it's available, we got to make sure they have the access.
Right, and they come bringing their customers, their relationship, and maybe most importantly, their local knowledge. That strengthens the whole market. So I think the idea, as you just alluded to, is we have to figure out a pathway to get the traditional or legacy market into the legal space. We have to convert them, turning them from competitors
to allies.
Into allies.
Yeah. I mean, they're both sides of this pendulum have things to offer to each other, right? And it is truly the merger of the traditional market, the business savvy, and the tremendous amounts of money that are here in the legal industry that will make everything better. It's like Voltron, forming together. Excuse me, pardon me.
You're all good, brother. All right, let's keep things moving because we're running out of time here. All right, so beyond the gray market, you've got the social equity and economic owned businesses, the very people the law was supposed to help, struggling with profitability. Meanwhile, the first wave of equity stores are actually more profitable. But here's the kicker. It seems like they might have the worst outlook on the future. The people who are actually making money don't believe it's going to last.
And that's the problem. When the people who are winning don't believe they'll keep winning, something is broken. It needs to be fixed.
And so OCM asked folks, what's driving all this? We have three concerns, right? What we just talked about is the fact that tax burdens, right? Section 280 is crushing small businesses, and they can't deduct ordinary business expenses.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Also, what we just mentioned, the gray market or the legacy market, right? That is competition right now. And until we find a way to absorb them and grow this market together in a legal sense, that's going to be competition, and people are going to go that way. The third thing is when you have more stores and customers, the margins get squeezed, right?
Yeah, and licenses are taking action. 51% switch vendors, 50% cut marketing, 48% started buying in bulk, right? A 41% reduction in staff hours. These are not survival tactics. These are survival tactics. They're not signs of a thriving industry or a healthy one.
Yeah, and so as we look at the numbers, the 40% definitely sticks with me. People seeing their margins decrease in the last 6 months, not stay the same, not increase, but decrease. That's what's going to hit home.
And when you ask non-operational licenses, people who have the licenses but haven't opened up shop yet, The answer is almost always the same: lack of capital. Money is the biggest barrier.
That's it. But from who? Banks don't seem to want to touch them, right? Investors are skittish. The state's social equity fund has been slow to disperse, and it's a barrier.
Yeah, it's a systematic barrier. It's one that a gap is filled by, MSOs, multi-state operators, people that have been in the industry and have resources to step over that barrier.
All right.
And profit from New York and New Yorkers who put blood equity, I like to say, into a legalized market. I think, look, for us who grew up here, who have been, in the park looking out for police just to get right, we deserve a piece in this multi-billion-dollar industry.
Talk, brother.
It is unequivocal. All the years of fear and running from police and all these, we deserve a piece of this pie.
Yeah.
And the biggest barrier is having the money to be able to get our slice.
And that's what's going wrong. And we got to talk about it. So here's where we land. The market is growing, 404 million already. That's real. Equity ownership is glowing, right? 75% of retail stores are C-owned. That's historic, but profitability is going wrong. Less than half of the licensees are making money, right? Those same owners are also struggling. Capital is scarce, taxes are crushing, and the gray market doesn't go away.
And it'll never go away.
At the Justice Lab, we'll keep clearing records and securing certificates of relief, so you no longer have to have those ghosts of past convictions haunting you every time you go to fill out a job application or a loan application, right? We'll keep helping you navigate the maze. But look, we can't do this alone, and honestly, we shouldn't have to. So here's the message, again, to Governor Hochul, to the legislator, to the Office of Cannabis Management. The data is clear. Equity ownership is working on paper. But the businesses you license are struggling to survive. Less than half are profitable. Those owners are hurting. Capital is locked up and banking is unavailable, and the gray market is everywhere. You promise a market built on equity. That means more than handing out licenses. It means making sure those licensees can actually open their doors, stay open, and build wealth.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem needs to be fixed, right?
So here's what we need. Fix the capital problem. Disperse the social equity fund dollars that are sitting idle. Create low-interest loan programs for the licensees. Work with credit unions and CDFIs to get money moving.
Solve the banking crisis. Use state powers to facilitate relationships between the cannabis businesses and the financial institutions that create a public list of banks willing to work with licensees so that there's an easy access to get somebody who will give them money.
And then create a real pathway for the gray market to come legal. Like we said earlier, not amnesty, but a clear, achievable process with reduced fees and expedited review. Give them a deadline, then enforce it hard.
Yeah. We need federal legalization.
Simple as that.
Because 280E is a killer for small business. The inability to write off expenses for doing day-to-day activities is a death sentence unless you have a bank of $5 million that you can stay afloat until you're up and running and stuff is accessible. And that's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Giving people the means.
Because real talk, the people who trusted this process, who invested their savings, signed leases, built out stores, hired local staff, they did their part. Now it's time the state to do theirs. I'm Sean Farrow of CJI's Justice Lab, and this is
David Auerlicht.
And we're sparking change. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and please be sure to visit our website, thecjei.org. See you next time.
Did you know that in New York, it's illegal to drive after smoking weed? Many believe recreational cannabis is a free pass, but that's not true. Even if you only have a little green in your system, you can be pulled over and face serious charges. And it gets worse. If someone is smoking in your car, you can still get a ticket, even if you weren't the one lighting up. Police are cracking down on impaired driving to keep roads safe. So if you enjoy cannabis, remember, never drive high. It's not just dangerous, it's illegal. Your rights are important, but so are your responsibilities. Always opt for a sober ride or use designated drivers. Knowledge is power, especially with the laws changing all the time. Stay informed, stay safe, and drive responsibly in the city that never sleeps.
Why are there not more people talking about cannabis in New York?
This segment fixes that.
Real voices.
Real answers.
Hey, we're Cannabis in the city.
Let's talk about cannabis, what you heard.
We hit the sidewalks to amplify community voices.
What people think they know.
And what they don't.
Many New Yorkers still don't know cannabis is legal.
Or what that even means. Career paths?
Most aren't hearing about those opportunities. Safe use.
The truth about legalization.
Are missing from way too many chats.
Subscribe to Cannabis in the City on YouTube.
Listen on all podcast platforms.
News updates.
Hi, this is Professor Coffee. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cannabis in the City. We want to give a big thank you to our special guest, Matt Wilson from the Cannabis Reinvestment Fund, for joining us here today.
And David Arlicht, shout out to David for joining us on Justice in Cannabis. Special shout outs to our production team led by the indomitable Kitty Rose for holding it down, because without you, this is not possible. To our audience, without you, this is not possible. And we gotta tell y'all, please subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us on all platforms. Listen to us, like us on all the podcast platforms. And please, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. And lastly, go to our website, thecjei.org.
Yeah, and we want to give a special shout out to our attorney, Jeffrey Sean Farrell, for his GQ look today on set.
GQ,
Jesus,
fabulous.
This dude was like, what the heck, no tie. Anyway.
Oh, wow, you giving it up, man. All right, so again, thank you all so much for being here with us on this 420, post 420, episode. And we look forward to seeing you at our next show. And lastly, let's spark conversation. We out.
Through hallways and alleys, dark days I carry, sharp pains and bellies. All days be heavy when you're programmed to survive. Legendary ciphers get the MCs in the jobs. The city never sleeps, slept from 1 to 5 when COVID hit the block and we had to stay inside. Tough love is all I know, so be gentle with my soul. Learn to navigate winters with no coat. If you never been cold, you never been broke. Hustle 24/7 just to stay afloat. So New York, like dollar pizza in the cold. What shit? That real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit. That real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit.